Hello, my name is Holly Mysick, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my competency. The theme that I chose was teaching subject matter, and my competency statement is, I am competent at developing collaborative lessons in order to engage all my students and lead them to learning. The guiding questions that I used in order to come to my competency statement are, number one, how do I best engage students within the lesson? Number two, how do students best learn? Number three, in what ways do I adapt the curriculum in order to make it more engaging? And number four, how do I teach subject matter? So this brings me to my evidence. I have 3 pieces of evidence, and I'm going to show it to you in the form of growth. So I'm going to have an example of where I'm not quite as competent, my big aha moment, and then finally where I am competent. So to begin with, I have a lesson plan from my math block, which I took the fall of my junior year. This lesson plan, I remember thinking that I did such a great job incorporating engagement and collaboration into my lesson. However, after reflecting back, you can see that students are just using their whiteboard to solve problems. So over and over, it just says they use their whiteboards, they use their whiteboard, they do work on their whiteboards. I will go through the problem, and so I'm, through this lesson, going through all of the problems, I'm doing all of the talking, and the students were expected to silently be solving problems. So this shows how I had an idea of engagement where they were doing problems on their board. However, I was lacking that critical component of collaboration, which is an essential part of engagement. So this brings me to my big aha moment. This took place last summer during my SPED tutoring. So I, during the summer, had the opportunity to tutor 2 boys who were going into the 5th grade the following school year. They both struggled with different components of reading, writing, and then different word works. So what I have here is their test scores from their initial assessment to their final assessments. So I'm going to focus more on reading. So one of my students, as you can see, went from a DRA level 40 to a DRA level 44 in just the short 5 to 6 weeks that I was working with him, which was very unexpected. My other student went from a DRA level of a 34 to a DRA level of a 38. Again, there was a huge jump in their reading abilities, which wasn't expected due to the short amount of time that I had to work with them. And so I came to the realization that during reading, they were going through a program called Peer Assisted Learning Strategies, or PALS. And this program had the students working together in order to best learn from one another and improve their reading. So students, the way that this worked is there was a coach and then there was a reader. And the coach's job was to guide the reader through reading a passage and make sure that the reader was reading the passage fluently and correctly. So here are the PALS rules. They were supposed to talk only to your partner and talk only about PALS. They were supposed to keep their voice low, cooperate with their partner, and then try their best. So with this, students were given different correction cards. So if a student made an error while reading, the coach's job was to tell them to check that error. And then, based on whether or not the reader actually knew the word, the reader would either say the word correctly or the coach would coach the reader into saying the word correctly. So students were given these different cards on how to partner read and how to retell and ask questions in order to improve their reading. Students were also in charge of filling out a point sheet. So for every sentence that a reader would read correctly, they would also have to mark off one of the points on their sheet. And so we would set goals at the beginning of reading to get to, so like we'd say, oh, we need to get to 20 points by the end of reading. And so they were naturally very competitive, and so they loved to work together in order to achieve these goals. So this was my big aha moment, that doing this collaborative reading and then also just throughout all of tutoring, we really focused on teamwork as being an essential component, especially since being tutored is more of a vulnerable thing where you are working on things you're struggling with. So we really worked on having this collaborative community and this close team. And so after having this team and after working through the PALS curriculum, And I noticed that students had these huge jumps in their reading level. So this was my aha moment that collaboration was actually a very critical component to teaching. And this brings me to my final piece of evidence. This piece of evidence takes place in my student teaching this semester. It happened in February, the beginning of February, in 4th grade at Wysong Elementary School. So this was a day 3 whole group reading lesson. LPS has these wonderful day 3 slides which naturally support collaboration, where there's a red partner and a blue partner. And they work through different questions using the sentence stems, and then we discuss. However, I wanted to take this a step farther. So what you can see from my lesson plan here is that I have students collaborating with peers, and I have a group of students forming a small circle in the room, and then another group forming a larger circle around them. So the small circle would rotate every couple of questions, and this gave students the opportunity to be collaborating with different peers throughout the lesson and expressing their different opinions and ideas. So my pieces of evidence show that I am competent at developing collaborative lessons in order to engage all students and lead them to learning. This brings me to my big ideas. I have 2 big ideas that I got from my competency statement. My first big idea is that a critical component to learning and engagement is giving students the opportunity to collaborate with peers. My second big idea is that as a teacher, it is important to give students numerous opportunities to learn from one another and help each other succeed. I realized that it was my role as a teacher not to be standing in the front of the room and talking at them all the time. It was my job as a teacher to be giving students opportunities to collaborate and express their ideas and their opinions. So this brings me to my connection to competency, which is that collaboration leads to engagement, and engagement is what leads to learning. So after working on my reflecting on my competency statement, I came to some different ideas about what I have learned. So I have ideas about what I learned about myself, what I learned about teaching and students, and then what I learned about collaboration in the classroom. So what I learned about myself is I learned that collaboration is very important to me as a teacher. I'm always looking for ways to incorporate collaboration into my classroom. What I learned about teaching and about students is that they really enjoy having the opportunity to talk with their peers and to express their opinions, their ideas, and their beliefs. And then what I learned about collaboration in the classroom, this links back to my connection to competency and my big ideas. But I learned that collaboration leads students to being engaged, and it brings them from having that surface level understanding of the curriculum to having that deeper understanding. After doing some reflection, I also realized that I do have some limitations when it comes to my competency. I decided to word these in the form of a question because these are things that I am still trying to find the answer to. So one of my limitations is, how do I incorporate collaboration when the material being covered is new to the students? When material is new to students, there needs to be a lot more explicit instruction. So how do I have explicit instruction while also allowing students opportunities to collaborate and learn from their peers? My second limitation is, how do I encourage this meaningful collaboration between students of different learning abilities? So if I have a gifted student and a student who's on level, how do I bridge that gap? Or if I have a student who has a learning disability with a different student, how do I bridge that gap and allow them to have these meaningful conversations and some meaningful collaboration? Finally, this brings me to my goals. So my next step, I accepted a job as a 1st grade teacher at Wysong Elementary. I am going to be attending different professional developments and using a lot of collaboration with my team and with my peers at the school in order to make sure that I am having collaborative lessons and to grow in that and grow in other areas of teaching as well. My long-term goal is that I will pursue my master's in curriculum and instruction. I believe that this will be a very natural fit with my theme of teaching subject matter and will only strengthen my competency statement and my other areas of teaching as well. So in conclusion, today I talked to you about teaching subject matter, and more specifically that I am competent in developing collaborative lessons in order to engage all students and lead them to learning.